Tom Lung again with Middle-Aged Musician. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about flexibility, something that I've had to incorporate into my routine both on and off stage for a long time, and hope that this makes some sense to you. I'm going to give you the scenario and the rundown, but the executive summary is this. If you are not flexible as a part-time musician or a side gigging musician, you're going to really struggle in a lot of scenarios in a lot of places that you wouldn't think that you would. And by that what I mean is sometimes as a musician we become so attached to our way of doing things, expertise, subject matter expert position, so on and so forth. But the fact of the matter is, especially when you are in the situation like most of us are that live this part-time lifestyle, I suppose, is that we don't always get to call the shots, and we are at the beck and call and somewhat to the mercy of the promoters or to the event manager, or maybe in some cases to other artists. It can be a real trying option on our patience, and we just don't want to let this get a hold of us. So let me give you the scenario that I actually experienced this on a gig this past week. I was actually a hired gun, was told what it was needed to do, etc. And so I worked on getting everything pulled together, making sure that I had the music laid out the way that the client had asked for, and even went actually above and beyond on a couple of items, unbeknownst to them, but it doesn't really matter. It's just a part of what I do. So had everything, as far as I knew, together. Everything was laid out appropriately, and there were no issues with what I had submitted. In fact, I had gotten a response back that they were happy with what I was offering. I arrived at the gig and was setting up sound equipment and trying to get ready to do a quick sound check, etc. When the organizer of the event came over and handed me a piece of paper and said, "Here's the working copy. We want to do this, 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 this." So I didn't at first understand, so I asked for clarification and made sure that I was following the train of thought. The one thing I did not do, which I think was positive, is I didn't question what they were asking at that point in time versus what I had prepared to do and what I was originally told that would be happening. And even another person came up, another secondary person within the event, and just asked how many songs I had planned, and I told them, and I said, if you need an additional, let me know. I can try to work something in, but try to just be as workable as possible, etc. And so the organizer said, no, we can make this work, and it's not a problem. The set started, the gig started, and I really was sort of flying by the seat of my pants in some respects, and just wanted to make sure that what I was doing complemented what they had asked for. And I should probably add that I go into most sets and most gigs, like this one anyhow, with the attitude that I'm being paid to do a job, and so I do the job. It's almost like being hired to be a landscaper or to be a painter. The client tells me what their vision and what their thoughts are, what their desires and wishes are, and I deliver on that and move on. Different from the settings where you're a singer-songwriter, you're going into a setting where you are more or less just said, all right, here's a 2-hour set, go do it. And then you have a lot of flexibility in the type of music, etc., because generally they've hired you because they've heard you or you've been recommended to them, and they more or less just leave you alone. But you have the artistic expression options and can do some things that, as long as overall the crowd is pleased and the promoter or the event organizer is pleased, then there will be minimal to no pushback on your set. Juxtaposed to when you are in a for hire scenario or a hired gun, either working for someone else, another artist, as a part of their band, or what I do is I typically do solo stuff, but I pre-submit my set for a pre-approval. And because of that, I typically get everything sort of sewn up right out of the gate, and there are few to no challenges, no changes, I should say. But in this particular case, there were changes. So I just decided a long time ago, and decided certainly this past gig, that you just flow with it. I'm prepared to do what I'm there to do, and aside from the option of possibly needing to add some music, which I could have easily done, wasn't that big of a deal for me personally. They just would have had some challenges from a presentation perspective that it may not have been as easy. But again, made the option, made the offer, and they said, no, we'll go with what you originally submitted to us. And at the end of the gig and the set, according to the responses that I got from both the event manager and some others, it was good. It was what they wanted. They appreciated what I did. We delivered on it. I should add that I did do a couple of things within the set that were not necessarily planned, but it was within the music that I had planned. So it wasn't like I was segueing into new songs or to a different arrangement or new wording or anything like that. I just took some artistic freedoms with the set that I had, just to help maybe expand and complement what it was that they were doing and what they had originally asked me to do. So how do you plan for this kind of stuff? How do you deal with it? How do you set yourself up for success during the unknown? And so I'm going to give you a couple of tips or pieces of advice that I sort of live by. And generally, these types of things, this will apply in this scenario for sure, I think, and maybe in other places. So, I know, by the way, these are not in any particular order, just kind of thinking through these as I travel today. So, first thing is, it's a 99.9% chance that a change in your set or a change in your song list or issues with your equipment, all that, changes that you're unexpected, basically 99.9% chance that no one will die nor even be seriously or non-seriously injured. It's music. You're making changes, you're singing a song, you're playing a guitar, an instrument, but it's not as if you're driving a 25,000 pound truck loaded with explosives and making a hairline curve. Trying to make a hairline curve with an oncoming school bus full of 5-year-olds on it. It's a relatively safe thing to do. So that is changing on the songs, not the explosive truck and school kids. So first off, I sort of just level set. All right, what's the big risk here? What's the major risk? So in my mind, the worst types of risk would be things like, I embarrass myself, I embarrass the promoter, I embarrass the event manager, I embarrass the crowd, I don't get asked back, maybe it gets shared on social media if there's something, kind of horrific there, and that in of itself can be kind of scary, I guess, but it's not that big of a deal, truthfully, in the grand scheme of things when you really look at it, especially if you're a musician or artist like I am, that this is not how I feed my family, per se. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, most of the time, everything goes relatively close to the plan. And I say relatively because we all know that there is ambiguity baked into every musical set. And that ambiguity is just a part of being a musician, being an artist. You just need to know that there are going to be days, and this is in life in general, that the plan will have a wrinkle in it. There will be a disruption somewhere along the way. So just know that the only thing that is for certain is that nothing is for certain. And if you go into it with sort of that tab on your folder, as it were, then when something does pop up on the horizon, you will not be thrown by it. It won't throw you off all that much. And B, you may have already anticipated or experienced that type of change before, and you can adapt and roll with the punches. The third thing I would tell you is in life isn't fair. Life isn't always the way that we expected it. I would pretty much guarantee that when you left high school, where you are today does not match where you thought you would be. And because of that, there is a certain element of adventure, and sort of like I think that stand-up comics who do improv, where they don't really have a planned responses and all this. They just kind of get up there and open themselves up and start engaging with the crowd, and they make it up as they go. And what that tells me about a person is that your abilities as an artist are really, really great, because you can adjust on the fly if needed. I would even submit that event managers and promoters that see you doing that like to work with you even more, because you don't become temperamental and fly off the handle over something, and it doesn't become like a bone of contention. In other words, it doesn't waver you. You just figure it out and fix it and move on. There was an old Marine that I used to listen to. He was a preacher out of South Carolina. His name was Cleb McCleary. The guy was shot up. I mean, he was married to a former Miss South Carolina, then shipped off to South Carolina and just got blown all to pieces by a mine. I think he lost one arm, lost an eye, and it was pretty gruesome. And the mere fact that he lived through it was a miracle in and of itself. But I heard him speak one time in person, and he had this saying. He said there was a saying that they used in the Marines called FIDO, F-I-D-O. And what it stands for is forget it, drive on. And the point was, when you come across adversity in your life, you once you deal with it, and maybe you don't deal with it, but keep going, move on past it. Don't just stand and waller in the pity of that. And as an artist, when you are doing a gig and something doesn't go exactly the way that you had hoped or planned or wanted, etc., maybe you evaluate a little bit, but FIDO, forget it, drive on. Forget it, drive on. This happens to me a lot if I'm playing and maybe I miss a word or I miss a chord or something. I just have to say to myself mentally, forget it, drive on. Keep going. I've had some pretty embarrassing moments, just like everyone else in life, and I've had to FIDO that moment. I've had to just forget it and drive on and get past it. So I would say that's probably one of the most important things too, is so you don't dwell on stuff and look back on it in the past. Learn from those situations, just like I said earlier. That way, when that situation arrives, or if that situation arises again, you know how to deal with it, or you have dealt with it. But don't dwell on it. Don't let that be the center stone or the cornerstone of your entire musical career, musical outlook on life. I think the next point that I would say too is take those opportunities to prove to others that you are much better than just a person that sits in your apartment or your house or wherever, learns 30 songs, and that's all that you can do. To me, the artists that are more versatile like that, who can shift on a dime, that's some crazy great gifting right there. And it's, to me, that is also not only just your gift and your mechanical ability to do that, but it's a gifting of the personality. to be able to look at someone and say, you know what, let me see what I can do and work through that with you. And the appreciation level from the requesters will be so high that you may end up doing much better in the end, even if it doesn't sound as good as you would have wanted it to sound, or the flow wasn't exactly what you wanted. Unless they're just really asking you for something that's crazy off the wall, I would suspect that they're going to appreciate the mere fact that you are willing to do whatever it takes to try to accommodate their request. And to me, that's a big deal. I had that to happen recently, in fact, at a place called REI. It's a outdoors store, and I had gone in to buy a beanie, and I had this, I thought I had a credit or had dividend monies. They give dividends based on your annual purchases. So I had like $6. And so the lady was trying to find, she's like, we can't find your dividend monies. And so they began to do some research. And what they found out was I'd already spent the dividend. I had actually bought some Eno straps, and I had forgotten to delete the email that I had about the dividend. So I'd forgotten that I'd even spent it. And so the girl goes, yeah, you've already used the dividend, and for this $12 or $20 beanie, it was like a clearance item. So she goes, but we're going to go ahead and give you $7 off of it anyhow. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And I even asked them not to do it. I said, no, you know what? My mistake. I screwed up. It wasn't you. You shouldn't take the hit. And like, no, it's no worries. No, we appreciate you as a customer, etc. What this says to me is, as a requestor, as a client, I made a request of them to do something that was not in their normal standard day-to-day. But not only did they do what I asked, they went above and beyond. So when it comes time for me to make another purchase, like other outdoor purchase for my bike or for my camping gear or hiking, etc., you better believe I'm going to go back into REI, and I'm also going to share the story, the good story, whereas opposed to them, standing their ground and saying, you've already spent it, and they had every right to do that. They were not in the wrong. But the goodwill that they created with me will go on for probably years. Now, let's flip that back over to being a musician. A recruiter or an event manager comes to you, or a promoter comes to you and says, hey, I know you have this set list, but I really want you to do these last 3 songs first. Now, you as a musician know that type of request is probably not in their best interest overall, and maybe you offer to say, hey, I'm glad to accommodate. Just let me give you a little bit of context here as to why I set it up this way and why you might want to keep it this way. But if they press the issue, if it's their event, if they're writing the check to you, then you're going to eventually concede, or at least I would. But at least you gave them that option. I'll guarantee you that if you do what they ask, and even if you give them an explanation as to why you're concerned about not doing it, but you say, hey, I'll do it this way, but I just want to make you aware, I guarantee you that promoter, event manager is more likely to refer you for other gigs, is more likely to appreciate the fact and maybe even pay you more. I mean, who knows? The goodwill, the social equity that you get out of something like that, to me, it's really hard to measure, and it's just worth it, I think, to a large degree. Now, if they are the constant change artist every time, you're going to have to make a decision as to whether or not that is worth it to you. But not a bad thing per se if you do it and you try to convince them otherwise and they say no. It's not a horrible thing. At the end of the day, you get paid, and as long as it's not something that's going to really defy your ethics or cripple you for future events, why stress over it? So, of course, there are lots of other things that we could add to this, and I'm going to kind of wrap this up because I don't want to go too long. But in essence, being flexible is as much a part of being an artist as being gifted in some respects. And the flexibility for me has helped to lower my stress. It's helped me to approach gigs and opportunities from a much lower, lower tension standpoint. And heaven knows, especially after this year's presidential election season, 2020 in general, truthfully, the less tension we have in our lives, the better. I want to close out by telling you I'm working on some new stuff. I think I maybe teased this the last episode, and one of the songs I have. And I'm doing this all just home recording. I'm not doing anything at a studio. I just don't have the money right now. And by the way, if you want to pitch in a little bit, I'll definitely take it, but not required. But I'm doing a few things, just self-recording, and doing some stuff live as well, and going to record it and try to get a decent sound out of it. I have a Reverb Nation account set up, so I may pitch some items over there, and if I can figure out how to do it without too much of a hassle, I may just put that in the show notes so you can click on the link. Have some other stuff already there from some past stuff that I've done in Christian music as well. So, at the very least, maybe it'll encourage you. And, aside from that, maybe you hear something you like, you might want to engage. Look, if you got some open gig sets and spots that you want someone to help out with, always glad to talk to you about it. If you are someone that would like to maybe have a house concert down the road, let me know. I love to tell stories and engage with people, and really working on my ability to take people on a journey, and us just to have a little bit of peace and solitude through the wonderful blessing and gift of music. Thanks a lot. Like the podcast, share the podcast, give me a rating. I think we're out on almost all of the major platforms now, and if you want to send me a comment or something, I'd be glad to address that as well, either privately or on the podcast. So enjoy and hang in there. We'll eventually make it through all of this crazy year.